Hi guys, Donald Trump and the Republican Party's hatred of the poor seems to know no limits. First they went after programs that provided meals for kids of struggling families. Then they gutted financial support that allowed some people to keep a roof over their heads. This was followed by a massive cut in Medicaid, which assists the most vulnerable. And now we have this. Trump issued an executive order shutting down the Department of Education. Now this will have devastating effects for millions of Americans. Why is he doing it? Well, because he hates the poor. It's as simple as that.
But I believe we'll get it done. Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them, but everybody knows it's right.
He's so obnoxious, isn't he? Everybody knows it's right. No, not everyone knows it's right. A lot of people know it's completely wrong. Now, how is this going to affect so many people? Federal funding and programs are necessary to fund schools, including grants for low-income schools and special education programs. So closure of this would disrupt those funding streams, potentially leaving states and local districts to fill that gap. And at a time when many local districts and states are already struggling to cover their own costs. So they relied, especially red states, the ones that actually vote Republican, these states relied heavily on funding from the federal government. And I covered this in a video some weeks back. Now, students also receive financial aid from the federal government. They're called Pell Grants. Now, these are probably going to disappear because if you're shutting down the Department of Education and they're responsible for this, then it will have to fall on the states or districts to cover those extra costs, and many of them probably can't afford to do that. There's also a civil rights issue here because the department enforces civil rights in education, ensuring protections for marginalized groups and including students with disabilities get access to education. This will all be gone. The Department of Education also engages in research and development, making sure that universities have access to the resources they need. This will disappear as well. So if the federal government is cutting all this funding because the department will no longer exist, it will mean that the poorest states will either have to make the decision of cutting funding for their schools, or they're going to have to raise taxes or find the money somewhere else. This is about punishing the poorest in society. I said this before, Elon Musk and Donald Trump see this as an opportunity to funnel more money into their pockets, to rely more on the private sector. So you're going to see more and more families having to rely on the private sector, so private schools, in order for their children to get an education. And if you don't have any money, then to hell with you. That seems to be the approach. So rich people will get by, while the poorest in society will continue to struggle. Donald Trump does not care about the people who voted for him. He never did, and he never will. And unfortunately, things like this will require people to wake up and smell the coffee.